tachometer wrapped around it, just like on an automobile. And this is your starter motor. Everybody knows what this is. It holds about 2.1 quarts of oil when you change it and the filter. Use a high detergent, like a 10W30 motor oil.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Just regular oil, no mixture, nothing, huh?
Plain old motor oil. Okay, so, and periodically you need to change it just take the top off, just like on a car. You got a round filter. It is a Kohler product. Okay, now, as I come on around the machine, is there any questions anything you're looking at over here with prompt question?
If there was a problem, your diagram would tell me what each one of these wires were, right?
Yeah, pretty much to a point, yeah. It'd be a little bit difficult, but if you really...
This purple one wasn't connected one day.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't, and the whole thing would not work.
Wouldn't start because you had no voltage, so you started cylinder. When you turn, it keeps in the start position. So you just, that's what happened. When you go to the start position, you energize the solenoid, that hooks your battery cable to your starter.
Okay.
As we walk on around, again, it is a double chev pulley, but we're only using one chev on the clutch. And anytime the engine is running, the outside spins all the time, but only when the pump is turned on, the clutch is turned on, does the center part turn, the middle part over here. Just like on your air conditioner or on your automobile. Pulley runs all the time, but only when you turn the air conditioner, then everything turns. Pump, we check the oil. The oil should be adjacent to the red dot, or really close to the red dot to tell you that you have sufficient oil in the cat pump.
Where would you, oh, never mind.
And you let it out down here. And your maintenance check.
So you do like an oil change in here like you would anything?
Exactly.
Okay.
And we walked on around. Now, at this point, I don't know how much of this you're going to do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I'm going to show you a little bit about pulleys and stuff like that. You'll notice down here on the thing, there's two of these, and I don't know when or whether you'll ever have to take one off or not, but the engine would have to be pulled forward about 3 or 4 inches to drop that sleeve out. That sleeve will drop out as soon as the engine is pulled about this far, because that's the only thing coupled the blower to the engine is the drive sleeve. Once they get out, everybody in the world knows that they see 3 bolts. Everybody in the world knows you take the bolts out to take the bushing out of the drive sleeve. But they don't know that the braking part is built into this. You take all 3 screws out, and this time you put them over here. Look where the threads are now. And when the threads come on, you know what it's going to do? It's going to push the bushing out. Over here, when I go here, look where the threads are now. They pull the bushing in. It's a tapered bushing. As I pull it in, notice it's got a crack in it. As I pull it in, it goes tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter down onto it. So anyway, if you ever take these off, they got all 3 screws, put the 3 screws in the other holes, and allow the bolts to push bushing out of the sleeve. Yep, a hammer will take it off sometimes, but most times it breaks the top off and they went $70 down the drain. So don't beat them off with a hammer. Guys that went out and rented wheel pullers when we had one built into it. Had a wheel puller bolt built into the system already. They went out and rented a wheel puller to try to get the thing off. But again, that's the reason I spend a minute or two just showing you a couple little things. One of the other type of bushings you might find is one like this. It's a tapered bushing as well. Notice there's 3 holes but only 2 screws. These 2 screws are the tighteners. So if you had to take that pulley off, you would undo the 2 screws completely. You'd put 1 screw back in the odd hole because it pushes everything the opposite way. So that don't frail it off with a hammer because it costs you money. Use the puller that's built into it to separate. So that's the 2 general types of pulleys and bushings that we have on the machine. this is not, this is just tapered bush, tapered shaft with a key in it, and this screw and washer holds it on the front. But one other little one I'll just mention for a minute. I mentioned something about soap solutions and calcium and minerals, plugging up the heater coils and maybe creating a scale buildup in the machine. We run into situations like this, and rather than get into the coils, we run into situations like this where the scale buildup gets quite heavy. But the guy was still operating and didn't even know anything was wrong with the machine, except when we went to warm with solution fill or took the male QD off the front of the machine, he still had 350 pounds of back pressure. It tells you something's wrong. Well, we got into it and found out he needed to descale the machine.
Descale.
Again, that's where we're going to run an acid through the machine.
To clean it.
That's how you would fix that? Burning acid?
What I would do, there's a procedure in the manual that tells you use a descaler hose. Remember that number? Where'd it go? Remember that number 7 I was talking about?
Yeah.
Unplug from number 7, plug this into number 7, drop this in a bucket of water and acid, run that stuff through the machine and back into the bucket, chase it round and around and around, and you'll etch out all this stuff will be etched out. Here's one.
That's calcium deposits and stuff like that, correct? Limestone, stuff like that?
Mhm.
Okay.
You see, they can even get worse. This guy said, I got the best pressure I ever had in my life, Henry. I got the best pressure I ever had. You better believe it, you got pressure you can't get rid of. So that's what scale can do to you, and it does the same thing inside of these. Now if you plug up one of those heater coils, you've bought the farm.
That's why it's best to use the kerosene instead of diesel.
Well, that's the type of product or chemical you're using, and maybe using too much soap, or not shutting this off and pulling those molasses into the system plugs things up. Now your kerosene just has to do with a little better heating product than diesel.
How difficult is it or timely is it to just replace the hose?
Well, what if it's halfway through those heater coils? We don't know where that blockage is. It's somewhere. It could be in one of the hoses. And like in this case, it certainly was. But it could be the heater coils at the same time as well. Yes. So we don't really know where it is. We just know the old doctor put blood pressure thing on my arm and said, Henry, your blood pressure is way up there. Well, whereabouts is it? And we better run it.
Right, so if we run it through the complete system, it's going to hit wherever.
Exactly. We run the acid through there. It takes about 30 minutes and takes about 2 quarts of descaler along with about 4 gallons of water.
Okay.
And there's a procedure the manager tells you exactly how to. I treat descaling like I do heart bypass surgery. If you got a heart problem and you're going to kick the bucket because of it, you better get it done. But if you don't run out and say, hey doc, I think you better do a heart bypass surgery. I mean, I just as a precautionary measure. You don't do that. You don't run acid through your machine unless you've got a pretty darn good reason to do it. Now, if these belts should become loose, how in this world would you tighten those 2 belts? You're getting there. Now I got those loose. Now what am I going to do?
Is there a certain tension that they're supposed to have?
They should be relatively tight. Let's put it that way. Loosen all 4 bolts. You're on top of it there.
Probably
This
finger bar.
okay.
Like
Now
this.
that's what I wanted you to say. You said it. You said what I wanted you to say, but no, that ain't the way you do it.
Probably not.
Look underneath the plate. There's 2 blocks and 2 jack screws.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
And
So now if you loosen the alternator and you crank those in, that's going to pull it out. And we made it easy for you, yeah?
If you want to kind of have that be the same.
I'm a shade.
Right, if you crank this a quarter turn, turn that a quarter turn. And then that should bring it out and keep it straight. Okay. And remember, if your alternator fails or your belt fails, you can unplug from the alternator, plug that into
wall
a
socket.
wall plug, and just keep trucking, because if you don't, can't generate your own, you'll borrow about a nickel's worth from your customer on a normal house.
Oh, that's it.
Maybe a dime if we splurge.
Oh, go ahead, make it 50. We'll take
It's
it
just a
off.
regular plug, there's no kind of adapter you
No,
need.
it's just a plain old
Okay.
male, it's a 90-degree, but it's just plain old metal plug. A lot of times I'll unplug these and plug in the power cord and reach over and turn the heater switch, and you hear that. Now you can't get the heater to come on because you don't have the water flow and all that, but you'll hear circuits all running down there just by plugging in the power cord. 110s, 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 you know. Okay, walking on around. We've talked about the filter. We want to keep it clean. We don't want to let debris and junk build up in the bottom of the tank. We want to keep it washed out quite well. And there's really not much to say, but that we hadn't already said over here. And as we come on around to the end of the machine, of course, there's a battery. There's normally a battery sitting here with a negative and positive cable. That's your starting your 12-volt DC for all your clutches and your lights and your running and starting your engine
This
and all
is
that.
your gasoline line from your vehicle?
No, well, you could. A lot of people will put a line down into their vehicle gas tank, and we always suggest they put a booster pump on that to bring the fuel on up here, so this other pump can pick it up. And I'm getting you wedged into the wall here. Let's see if let's get it around this way a little bit. There we go. I think we can see better now. So anyway, your kerosene goes through a filter, and goes into the kerosene pump on the back side of this thing.
Okay, so what are these for?
One is for kerosene and one is for gasoline.
You put them in a tank.
To put into the machine, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You have like a 5-gallon or 6-gallon jug.
So somewhere there's a tank, and this is the input line to it.
Just like a motorboat. Just
Okay.
like a boat has a boat tank and a squeeze ball in the.
Yeah, you'll have two tanks over here, the red and the green one usually.
Right.
Unless you take your line and run directly into the van's vehicle's gas tank, can be done.
And which one's more advantageous?
What do you mean?
You gotta have both of them.
I know, I'm talking about
Well,
when you're using your fuel and stuff.
well, a lot of people say, I don't like to have all that extra tank in the back of my truck. I use gasoline, I have gasoline to run my engine on my truck anyway, so why not just have one tank? And then maybe have 2 tanks of kerosene, see?
Okay, now here's one more question.
Okay. The bleed valve. If you run out of kerosene, you probably sucked air,
Some air.
and you need it. So I got my fresh tank of kerosene, and the first thing I'm gonna do before I try to make the burner come on, I'm just gonna turn the heater switch on, and I'm gonna open the bleed valve and give me a cup under it in case we made a pint of kerosene. And once it starts bleeding real good, we'll shut. Now that took the air out of the system, you charged it ready to go.
Okay, so it's just, if I cut that on, if the heater's on and I cut this on and nothing's here, it's gonna just push it out.
It'll spit and splutter a little bit, then here comes the fuel. When the fuel starts coming out solid, it will shut. You
Okay.
got the air out of the
All right.
system. Good shot. Okay, coming on around the machine, we have a filter, and there's a multitude of different filters will fit that. But there's only one that I know of, if the engine should fail, that Kohler would give you warranty on that, is while this
Kohler's
sucker's
filter.
while you're under warranty, don't get caught with a situation where you have a pretty bright orange or red filter on there, and the engine, something happens to it, and Kohler looks at it and they say, nah, we can't warranty that, use the wrong filter. We don't want to put anybody in a position where Kohler would void the warranty, because I didn't know that, and I got caught with that by the Kohler reps here one day. They came in, and they do from Kohler, Wisconsin. They come in every now and then and check. How you doing? Got questions? Yeah. Let's go look at your maintenance shop. Well, we did. He come back, and we got in the classroom, and he says, hey, I noticed that machine had a pretty orange filter on it. You recommend them? Well, being an old country boy as I am, I said, well, I've been using them for 40 years. They're really great. I like them. He and they don't have built-in valves, and you could get yourself in big trouble by using those. So anyway, he had been gone. It's a little different. It's the same. It would fit, but he'd been gone about 15 minutes when I went to the bandsaw with a brand new filter, and I cut one open to see what it's doing. He's right. See the valve in here? So
He said it didn't have that in there?
if you buy one from a pretty orange filter, it may not have it in it.
Oh.
Don't have the safety glass in there. Or it may be the wrong filter and it doesn't let the oil flow like it's supposed to. Anyway, he was nice about it. He didn't rake me over the coals too bad, but he made me feel like this big, you know. Since that day forward, I am not sticking my foot out and get somebody else into trouble. I said, well, Henry said I could use an orange filter. I'm not going to slay that. Now, after it's out of warranty and you know if they won't cover it and you feel safe about it, go for anything that turns you on, but I'm not going to get you in an awkward situation. Okay, now, coming on around a little more, we got two drains here. One of them is for the blower to drain all the oil out of the blower, out of that crankcase, and the other one is for the engine. So if I wanted to, I could drain my filter, my blower, and my engine all at the same time if I chose to do it. The only one I wouldn't be doing is the pump. But I could stick a pan under here and catch all three of them.
Because they all use the same oil?
Nope.
Oh, they don't?
Your blower uses tubular blower oil. Your engine uses your favorite brand of 10W30 motor oil.
Okay.
And your pump uses cat pump oil.
Okay. But you can still service them
Yeah,
at the same
and
time.
one pan will catch all if you want to do all three. And your oil changes a lot better and goes a lot faster if you change it while the engine is still warm. If it's cold and stiff, it sits there and dribbles and it takes forever to get it out. So, whew, my gosh, we've been around this now. Have I covered everything I needed to cover on this? I feel like I have. Although I always leave it to questions if after we walked around the machine one time, let me show you the oil sentry switch just in case somewhere, sometime, and I don't know what I'll be, you guys, I know I can't see it, but I know you guys can. You see a little thing sticking like a little spark plug there with a wire on top of it? Yeah. That's your oil sentry switch. Little thing sticking up with a wire right on the very top of it. It's right about there.
Oh, the one with the red?
Little red.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That means if you don't have any oil pressure, that sentry switch is going to close and it's going to ground out your ignition system.
Okay.
Well, we know right now it's closed because there is no oil pressure.
That's the thing you were telling us.
And that's when I push the button, I bypass the switch momentarily. If that's the only way you can make that engine run, don't.
Yeah.
That's the only big precaution to say. If that's the only way you can make your engine run is to push the button, and don't do that because your system is saying, hey fella, you got a problem. You got no oil pressure and I don't want you to run. Find out what is the problem before you insist on that engine running. Well, let's once around the machine, showing you a little bit about the different pulleys and bushings. And now let me hit one more while I'm with you. Somewhere down the road, it's possible that this drive sleeve right here, this black drive sleeve, it's possible that something happened to it, it break or crack or something like that, wear out or whatever. And if you have to change this drive sleeve, the only way to do it is to undo the 4 bolts that hold the engine down. There'll be a back cover over this. Take the back cover off because it's not going to let the engine go very far. And as you start to pull the engine forward, you may run into the panel, but you probably will. If you do that, loosen these 4 screws on the side, take these 4 screws out on the side, and loosen these across the top. Let this thing act like a hinge. You only have to go this much further. So by letting your panel swing out, you'll be able to pull the engine out far enough that you can drop out your 8JE sleeve. That's what it is called, an 8JE sleeve. Now, everybody says that wasn't too bad, that wasn't too hard to do. And he has one in his hand over there so that you can see what it looks like when it's pulled out. Now, one of the most important things in this procedure, and it's in the manual, you may have seen pictures of that sleeve where they had a ruler across it, and they're realigning this. Before you put your belt back on here, you just left your belt hanging. Before you put your belt back on this, you got your engine pushed back in, you got your 4 bolts and 4 nuts started on the bottom of the engine plate. Before you tighten them down while they're still finger tight, go and use that little straight edge, and your book does tell you exactly what to do. You're going to lay your straight edge across here, across there.
Make sure that's all the way around.
Because those are flat on the side. Your flanges are flat on the side. A little 4-inch ruler, push it up flush. If it don't quite touch the other, kick the engine around left or right. There's enough slop in the holes that you can move the engine left or right to get it properly aligned. I mean exactly aligned. Okay, now as you begin to tighten your bolts down, come back again and again and again, because as you tighten the bolts down, that engine may have slipped a half a degree left or right. Well, that's thrown you back out of alignment again, and your engine and your machine will, and that's not good.
Are there torque specifications on any of this?
Oh, not too much. General, I use the old horse sense and say, yeah, that's tight. That's about. Of course, on your engine, you don't want to honk them down because they're big old, great big bolts. You can grit your teeth and grunt on those, and that way, when you know the engine's not going to slip on you. But you want to make sure in the process of doing your engine down. Now, we've talked about how to tighten the alternator belt, right? Showed you the little trick there. You don't have to use the bar that I knew you was going to tell me to use, because we got the jack screws. The other belt is the pump belt that runs the cat pump. I think you've got it figured out already just by looking at it. You'll see that the 4 bolts are in slotted slots there on the mounting plate. Now what you're going to do is loosen that up, and see on your side over there you got 2 handles, right? You got one handle here and one handle here. You pull it towards you, and that'll allow this thing to slide, and that'll tighten the belt. And while you're holding a little tension on it, get your partner to tighten the 4 bolts down. Now you got your pump good and tight. It doesn't take a lot of torque to run this cat pump. Usually between 3/4 to 1 horsepower of energy is about all it takes. So you can get away with quite a bit. But tighten it, I mean, it's a whole lot easier to tighten it than it is to change it. So you said if you change a belt, you got to push that engine forward. You got to drop your belts through the crack, and then realign again. Because the only way you're going to
tighten it a little bit.
Only way in the world you're going to get a new belt over that shaft is to pull the engine forward, like we were talking about a minute ago, and you drop your belts in and go back through your alignment procedure as mentioned earlier. Now you guys know everything fun running the machine. I'm going to demonstrate to you for about 5 minutes how to run it. That's all it takes. I'm going to let you run it till you say I'm happy with it. Then we're going to say, head east, young man, head east. I'd have to assume that we would have gone through our steps here. Yeah. We would have checked our oil, and we know that everything is a go.
Checked.
And we know we got our water hooked up, vacuum and pressure hooked up. Now, if it's really cold, you might have to think about cold weather techniques, but not for another several months. You're going to worry about that too much, unless something really strange happens.
Yeah.
So right now, well, the engine probably hasn't been started in a little while, so I'm going to throttle it a little bit. I'm going to pull the choke out, and we're going to see whether it fires right away or whatever. It probably will, but I'm going to hold the finger. You can hold the finger on the button as long as you want to. You don't.
Okay. It don't hurt nothing.
Don't hurt it. I'm off. Another little thing I like to do is a 3-off step thing that I've found that's easy to remember. This is off, and this is off. If you'll do that, that's a pretty easy way to remember everything is pretty much ready to go. So. We got oil pressure, we got the engine running. We don't have to hurry about anything now. We can take it slow and easy and think about what we're about to do. What we're thinking we're going to do is throttle this thing up to a run speed about 2,900 RPM. Then put some of the better eyes and double blanket. lower and you turn it off, you get a lot more you'll get a lot of pre-ignition. Somewhere around 14 to 1500 RPM is a good place to turn it off. And you'll find out later on as the days get hotter and all that if it pre-ignites, you find, well, I turned it off. And 17 works better, so you'll find out what to turn on. But at this point, it may tell you, I believe it tells you at the end of the day, it'd be a good idea to shut that off. I'll tell you why. I've had this happen occasionally. Your tank is almost full. You left this thing open. Tomorrow morning you come out to check your tank and say, half of my solution is gone. I don't find no leaks nowhere. I don't see anything. What happened? Well, what happened is it siphoned itself back into this tank. Because there is a way to get to it. That's very unlikely that that's going to happen. But anyway, I've got that turned off now. So at this point, I'll leave it off because you'll get used to looking back to turn it off. And kind of go back through, and I'll let you do it, either one of you. And I don't have any idea that we're going to have problems running it between the two. I'll be hanging around here. If you have a question as you play with it, holler at me. I'll be right here. If you break it, I'll fix it. Okay. If I don't fix it, I'll get it fixed. Okay.